to the show. And if you're wondering why, Rob is here with me, well, he saved me.
Well, the first thing they're wondering is who the heck is this guy? So it's not even.
Well, you're in luck today because today is going to be different. It's going to be full of laughs. My co-host, she got pulled into some natural disaster event at the last minute. So, I don't know if I should be happy. I'm not happy that there's a natural disaster, but, sometimes, spontaneous things happen. And this is why we have Rob.
Well, the first thing you got to do, though, I think you got to tell the people who you are and what it is that you do to make the world a better place.
Oh, thank you, Rob. Thank you for the reminder. So, yes, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nada Bohendi, and I am a master career coach. And I love helping people land jobs that they love. But truthfully, it wasn't always the case for me. I was lost and clueless about what I wanted to do. So today's episode is for those of you who have been curious, asking me, how did you figure it out? You help people figure out what they want to do. How did you figure it out for yourself? So here we are talking about this.
Yeah. So, all right, let me. I'm very curious myself now. So, take us back to the time when you were lost and in the wilderness. What was happening during that time period?
My goodness. I mean, we're talking about almost a 15-year span here, Rob, where I was lost. I was, in the depth of the forest for 15 years trying to find my way out of the forest. And it was dark and scary, full of wild animals and
Lions and
monsters.
tigers and bears, oh my.
Yes, yes. I'm sure we've all, encountered those in the workplace. But truthfully, yes. I had some ideas when I was a child and a lot of dreams. Some of them felt silly. And I think a lot of it was, my parents were just very pragmatic. I came from an upbringing that is Middle Eastern, and it's all like, you got to be a doctor, you got to be an engineer.
Mhm.
So that is when I got into the bad habit of not listening to myself and being overly analytical instead of leaning into my intuition and what I enjoyed. But I mean, I knew from a very early age that I wanted to build products. I used to have a learning disability as a child, going to school. And I used to come home and teach myself the whole curriculum because being in a traditional environment and sitting in a classroom, listening to someone talk and talk and talk bored me to death. And that's just not how I learned. So I would go home and literally reteach myself the entire day worth of subjects. So that's when the first idea came to me of I should really be a teacher. And that further solidified when my mom started her business. She transitioned from being in banking as an executive to starting her own daycare for kids.
Now that's a big shift.
Yeah. And so I, found myself enjoying helping her. The funny thing, it wasn't just enjoying teaching the kids, but actually helping her start her business. But, I didn't read too much into it as someone who is 16. I just saw it as I loved it. I enjoyed it. I was in my element. And I had no idea how to translate that into a career because they don't teach you that stuff in school. They don't teach you how to take what you enjoy and map it into a career. It's just a matter of going to school, take all these subjects, and you have no idea what those subjects could lead to.
So you would say your first love was actually teaching others and helping others.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That is a common denominator across, I will say, everything that I've gone through from birth all the way to the age of 18 and beyond. I mean, even for fun, even with my family, my sister was she was about 3 years old and I taught her how to read. And at the time, I was maybe like 13 or something like that.
So now you said parental pressures stopped you from doing what it was that you wanted to do. I can almost guarantee you that at least one person listening right now is facing or has faced those types of parental pressures. So talk about that. What did that look like to you, and what did it cause you to do because you didn't follow your heart?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's something that I've seen a lot with my clients too. Um, Either sharing with me that they didn't want to disappoint their father or their mother, or maybe their father was in a particular profession. And so they wanted them to get into that profession. For me, um, I think a lot of it was, well, from my father's side, he was a very, very like practical person. I mean, the thought of doing things that you enjoy was not a factor. I mean, military background type of
Ah,
thing. Follow the rules, work hard, don't slack off, and go for the most practical and more profitable path.
mm,
So for him, it was like, you should either be a doctor or an engineer or that kind of thing. And with my mom, in a weird way, she got into medical school when she first, went into college. And again, pressure from my grandfather. And the interesting thing, which I didn't understand, and I gave her a hard time about, was she actually did not walk that path that was dictated to her. She did not go into medical school. She realized that she didn't enjoy it, and she went into business school instead. And
mm.
so, in a weird way, she was worried that I would make a mistake. Like she felt that she made a mistake, and she didn't want me to make the same mistake.
Ah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So she went against the grain and then regretted it and tried to put you back on the same path that she escaped from. But it sounds like she had a pretty good career in banking though. So
She
it worked
did.
out.
She did. It worked out. And you know what? I think there was a
Mm.
little bit of imposter syndrome for her going on because when she was an executive in the banking world, like it was so prestigious. It was, very status oriented. And when she left that and went into starting the preschool and the daycare, going from like working all of these, wearing all of these suits and, like high profile meetings and traveling as an executive to like, working in a daycare where there are like kids, screaming and, you're not going to wear your fanciest clothes, right? There was, I think, like a window of time where there was small regret, like, oh, what are people thinking of me because I just left, this high status role to do this. And she was still early in her entrepreneurship journey, and that intersected when I was going to college. And that is the reason,
Ah.
that she was feeling that way. But now if when I talk to her, she's like my biggest cheerleader because she's like, 30 years into her business, has gone through it, has gotten a lot of fulfillment, and very adamant of, no, you can't give up. This is what you enjoy doing. It's not just about the money.
Okay, so now she's your biggest cheerleader, but you fell into that trap also of trying to live up to other people's expectations. And so now where did that lead you?
Well, it led me into, I will say, 15 years of misery. Okay. So I made the same mistake. And this is why I tell people a lot of what we do comes from childhood, and it comes from,
Mhm.
subconscious beliefs and things that we pick up from our parents. So subconsciously, I was influenced by my parents and my mom around, hey, your worth is tied to the prestige and the status. And I remember my first job was at Deloitte. I remember when I walked into this conference room because they were there to basically promote, their organization, to scout, new grads. I remember seeing all these fancy pens and pamphlets, on all the chairs, and all these people like dress so nicely. And I'm just like, yeah, that's the company I want to work for. That's how I made my decision. I didn't make it based on what is it I'm going to do day to day. Am I going to enjoy that? Now, the other catch is when you're still new in your journey and you just come out of school, you haven't experienced enough, in the workplace to know what it is that you enjoy and you don't. So there was a little bit of that, but I can't deny that I was blinded by status more than, am I going to be making a lot of social impact? Am I going to be happy? Is it really who I am?
Yeah, status doesn't necessarily give you personal fulfillment. And so you spent the next 15 years working in a corporate sector. Okay, okay. So how did you find your career sweet spot? Like, I know it was a 15-year journey, but was there like one defining moment or a series of things that kind of just kept speaking to you? How did it end up happening?
There were a lot of events, and when people learn about me and go on my website, they read my origin story, and all they see is, oh yeah, she quit over text one day, and that's how she decided to become a career coach. But there was a lot more to that. Um, the first thing was I had a very difficult upbringing. So to me, it was a multi-phase approach where I felt the biggest priority was just to escape, like leave the country.
Mm.
So I achieved that, and that's when I got into engineering school. But then I realized that the heaven that I thought I created to aid me into that escape plan actually ended up a prison. Engineering school to me was awful. I mean, it was a great school, but it was not great for me. I did not enjoy staring at a computer all day trying to debug code. That's not who I was. I wasn't naturally good at it. And so I felt like an idiot compared to the other students. And here I was being used to being a top performer. And that was harder on me than the average person, feeling that I was mediocre, feeling that I wasn't shining because I was tying my entire self worth into my career. That is how I coped my entire childhood, by studying and getting straight A's. Everything was dysfunctional in my childhood. And that was like the one source of hope for me. So when that one source of hope failed me, I was devastated, you know? Um, and I felt like, okay, I'm either going to end up failing and I'm going to have to go back
Mm.
to a very dysfunctional, family situation with a father who is an alcoholic and lashes out every now and then. Um, or I should just find another path, even if it temporarily feels like, I failed. And it doesn't have to be engineering, it's going to have to be something else. And it's okay that it's not going to be like a, I don't know, impressive job.
Yeah,
So
so
that
it's
was a hard pill for me to swallow.
yeah, yeah. It sounds like you literally were lost.
I was lost. I was lost, Rob. It was so bad. People have no idea how bad it was. I mean, I'm just going to paint you a picture, right? That's how bad my family situation was, that I got into college, and I used to spend Christmas by myself in a dorm room. Like the whole campus was abandoned. They weren't shoveling the snow because I do live in Canada. Um, and I was turning on the lights in every like common area in the dorm, like the place where people gather and watch TV, and um, because everyone was gone, it was a ghost town. And the way I used to entertain myself during that time was to just go shopping and go to the groceries, because I went to school in a city called Kingston, Ontario, that is meant to be like a student city. Like all there
Ah,
is a
yeah.
university and people who are retired. So when Christmas time hit, everyone's gone. Everyone's left the city. But it was so bad that I felt that I would rather be in an empty, basically dorm room with the campus, snow piling up than actually go home and visit my family because that's how bad my family situation was. So to be at the basically threshold of about to fail out of college when that was like my almost call it my refugee camp, I felt like I was in a horrible situation. I had no choice, no option. I had to find another way to survive. um and so I was so good my entire childhood to kind of put a mask on and push through things, but it got to the point that I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't pretend. And no matter how hard I worked, and studied, I wasn't getting the grades.
Mhm.
And I found myself one day, like lying on my bed, like just staring at the wall and just telling myself, like, what am I going to do?
But you eventually found a career that allowed you to do something that you were good at, but you weren't necessarily happy still. Is that
Yeah.
is that right? Yeah?
Yeah.
So
But,
what happened there?
but what happened when I left engineering school was it was literally the first time where I decided to do something against what my parents wanted me to do.
Ah,
That was a pivotal moment for me personally because I was always the teacher's pet. I was my parents' pet, everything they said, I followed the orders. I mean, it's so funny because my dad, was a dentist. And just to give you an idea of how good I was and obedient I was as a child, by the way, I'm no longer obedient. But he was a dentist, and one of his rules was I wasn't allowed to eat any hard candy.
oh,
So no lollipops. So, as kids, when you get, your assignments right or whatever, they give you lollipops at school. So I would bring those lollipops home to my dad and just say, "Hey, they gave me a lollipop. I know I'm not allowed to eat it, so here it is." That's how good I was as a child.
that kinda messes up Halloween time. I mean, that's
There was no such thing in my household. You're dealing with a father who's a dentist. So yeah, so for me to for the first time stand up for myself and say, "I'm sorry, mom and dad. I can't do this. Like it's just not humanly possible for me to actually graduate from engineering school. Would you rather have me like fail because I don't see another way, or I'm just going to change. I'm going to switch over to another degree." And my parents cut me off and I was an international student. There was no way for me to actually pay the tuition other than get support from my family. I did not have an authorized, work visa.
right. Oh, wow.
And I had to basically put myself in a position where I was like waitressing and collecting money like cash and dealt with, situations where I was being taken advantage of because they knew that I couldn't report them, for mistreating me in the workplace. So, that was my first moment of rebellion. And it kind of opened my eyes that, what, if you don't follow the rules, you're not going to be dead. And if you go against what people feel that you should do, you're not going to be dead. And so that kind of unleashed a whole big thing for me. It didn't happen overnight, but it started building the courage and the stamina. Going from, after, working as a consultant, I still felt kind of forced doing it.
Mhm.
But I got closer and closer and closer to what I wanted to do. Um, I should have probably left, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years earlier than I stayed. But at the end of the day, it also, in a weird way, gave me exposure to things that I actually can speak to when I work with my clients. Because if I hadn't, if I hadn't, gone into the software development world, if I hadn't worked maybe as temporarily as a developer, as a business analyst, as a product manager, I wouldn't be able to help my clients because I wouldn't have the context that I have now. But the big pivotal moment was, is when I quit over text. And that to me was, that's it, I'm done, and figuring out that I was a career coach. I mean, it sounded like it was an overnight thing when I was working with my career coach at the time, but it was a compilation of self-reflection, of looking at what is the common thread, what are the different things that I'm good at. And ironically, I realized that I'm actually really good at finding those patterns. Um,
Yeah.
I figured that out for myself being a career coach, realizing that educator is the common thread, but it doesn't have to be in a school setting. It can be as a career coach. And then I developed my career archetype, basically model, after working with 100 people. But I think the big lesson here, right, is that um, really like using your struggles as a learning, um,
Mhm.
really looking into who you are as a person and not just what it is that you enjoy. It really is the combination of those three things, which is the problems you enjoy solving, how you like collaborating with people, and the social impact that you want to make. And I had to analyze that throughout my journey to realize that it was career coaching that I wanted to do.
So I think you hit on a few things that I know a lot of people struggle with. I think a lot of us have either parental and or societal pressures that force us into doing things that don't really bring us joy, and we all have that struggle where we're trying to figure it out in life. And then I think too, the patterns, because we keep denying what it is that we want to do until we hit a breaking point like you did when you decided to just quit over text. And while it seemed kind of rash, I think you're right. It was a culmination of a lot of different events that kind of led you to where you needed to be here and now. Even when you just said a few minutes ago, the teaching component is there. It's just not in a classroom. So now you are helping other people to find their career sweet spot. Let me ask you a question. When it comes to your clients, what is the biggest obstacle that they face in finding their career sweet spot?
Whew, the biggest obstacle, I will say it's definitely imposter syndrome. I
Ooh,
think people sometimes mistake the fact that, okay, so they go into a work environment. Maybe there are other people who naturally pick things up faster than they do, right? Or maybe it's, maybe it's just not the right environment, because that plays a huge factor. People feel sometimes that it's actually the job that sucks, but it's actually the environment that sucks. And it causes them to mistake it for that. Um, and so I think what happens is people go through trauma when there is a negative event that happens in the workplace, whether it's a mean boss, or it is just the wrong environment, or maybe they're just different than other people. And by different, I'm being literal, whether it's a minority, whether it is differently abled, whether you're just different from a values perspective. And because they don't belong in that specific situation, they turn it into this huge story of, well, I don't belong anywhere and there's
right.
something wrong with me.
Yep.
And I think until people realize, hey, it's like any relationship, you're not a bad person. The other person is not a bad person.
Yep.
It's just not the right fit. So stop being so down on yourself and giving up, and spend more time figuring out who's going to see you as the most amazing employee, because there is a company for everyone and there is a job for everyone. You just need to go and figure out what that is.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. So if I were working with you would help me to determine what it is that I really like to do, like where I shine. But then you would help me identify some of those roadblocks, the things that might be stopping me, and then you would help me move forward. Is that what you do as a career coach?
Absolutely. I think people think that what I do is I just go and I write their resume or we work together on their resume and just prep them for interviews. Um, Sometimes I don't say that right away because sometimes people are not ready to hear that.
Yep.
And so I will talk about the resume, but then when we start working more closely, I'll say, you know, that company that you worked for, what happened? And
Yeah.
they'll say, oh, they let me go, or my boss said this thing to me that made me feel very upset. And I'll ask, well, do you think that could be the reason why you're so scared? And so, not to say that I'm a therapist, but there's a lot of layers that we need to peel that block people. I feel a lot of it is, you know, us, feeling like we're not good enough. And once we find out why that is and how can we feel good about ourselves, that's when we get unblocked. That's when we find that thing that lights them up, and then we work on putting that into action, all the tactical stuff around the resume and the interviews.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because a lot of people are just looking for a job, and they don't understand that you can be happy at work. Like it does exist, but you got to be doing something that you really, really love. See, I have this theory that when you see people that are really, really good at something, it's because they really love what they're doing. But when you can tell when somebody is just in it for the money, because when you look at them, there's this melancholy look on their face. They're not happy. And I really like the fact that you help people find their career sweet spot. I actually like the fact that you call it the career sweet spot, because I think we need to be in a world where we can be happy doing what we do. I know when I do what I do, there's this big smile on my face. And it doesn't even feel like work. And to know that there's somebody that can help other people actually feel that very same way, it's amazing. So let me ask you, with your clients, what's the one client where you just saw the biggest impact? What happened, and what was that impact that you had on him or her?
Oh, um, gosh, one client shared with me that she was so given up, and I didn't know this. I found out later, but she shared with me she was so given up, like she didn't even want to wake up the next morning.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. And I had no idea. Um, And so seeing her text me, I will say a year later, and tell me, my goodness, I cannot believe that I'm doing this. This is amazing. Like, I'm making six figures. When I came to Canada, I was an immigrant. I had to do all these. I mean, she had to work for a company for free for an entire year. I was just
Wait,
disgusted
what?
hearing that. She did pro bono work for an entire year because she wanted to just
Wow.
get experience. And it's not like she didn't have skills. She did. She provided a lot of value. And so, yeah, when I hear something like that about a person's life transformed, that just brings me a lot of joy.
Wow. Yeah. Now that's amazing. That almost sounds kind of illegal, but okay, that's a topic for another day. That's that's a topic for another day. You know what I think too? I think that we're going to start to see, or we're already seeing it, but I think we're going to start to see more people trying to pursue things that they enjoy in the workplace. Because right now, when I look at the statistics, we're showing that people are at some of the saddest levels ever. We have more prescription drugs for depression and anxiety being given to people than in any other time in history. And I think it's time for a shift and a change. And we've been seeing it over the last few years. Um, so tell me, for you, when you found that career sweet spot and you started doing what you're doing and you're doing it right now, how does it feel every day when you wake up and you quote unquote go to work? Because you work for yourself. So, but how does it feel when you every day? How does it feel for you? Because I just want people to understand what it feels like when you find it and you can really operate in that thing that brings you joy.
Gosh, Rob, like when I'm working with someone during a coaching session, time flies, just like how time is flying right now, you and I talking. It's just a lot of fun. It doesn't feel like work. There is that level of chemistry and connection that I've never felt in any of my jobs. And the amount of value and the respect that I get from my clients is something that I wish I got, when I was putting in all of this extra time and overtime. I think it's like I mentioned before, like when you're in a toxic relationship, whether it's romantic or,
Yep.
friendship, work related, the person gets irritated by you, you know? Just like normal things that you do, they get irritated. But when it's the right person, they love all of those little quirks about you. And I can just be myself with my clients. It's like my I don't know, kingdom. My little
Yeah.
kingdom. When we have a little kingdom. We have a little community, it's about 130 people,
Oh wow.
and everyone tells me like it's such a safe space. They feel empowered, they feel loved, they feel supported. They haven't seen any other community where, I've had clients who developed such deep friendships that when someone has an interview, they will stay up late at night help supporting them.
Wow.
That's just how tight knit it is. I've met with a lot of my clients who are co-located in person. We've gone, for dinner, etc. We had a celebration at one point for my business anniversary. It's just unparalleled. But am I going to say that, oh, it's just smooth sailing and there are no worries and there are no hurdles? And that's the part that people mistake. People
Right.
mistake like you being at your element and doing what you love and being challenged with, oh, it's just going to be smooth sailing and you're not going to have any hiccups and all of that stuff. It's not the case. I still have challenges. There are still hiccups. Look at what happened today, although it turned out very well. um
Nobody knows though.
Nobody even knows. But yeah, it's great. I feel like I'm home in the job that I do. And that's how I want people to feel, that they're home, that it's natural.
Yeah. I can completely relate to that and agree to that. I mean, you've seen me kind of do what I do and you see how much I enjoy it. Now, for those of you who don't know, her co-host today canceled on her and we're in a group together and she was just like, my co-host canceled. I said, call me. I'll just hop on. But again, that's what I do though. I'm a trainer and I'm a public speaker. I'm a keynote speaker. I like talking to people and I'm a curious person. I like asking a whole lot of questions. So being able to figure out what it means to have a career sweet spot and how your past really affects your present and your future and how you have to have the courage to actually tackle those demons that are in your past so that you can have a brighter future. That's what I got out of this conversation, by the way, in case you hadn't noticed. That's what I got out of this conversation. But here's what I've got to do. I got to run because I got another meeting to go to. So thank you for having me and talking to me today. And we'll
Thank
see
you
you
so
later.
much, Rob. Have a great day,
You too.
everyone. Bye.